Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next City of Echoes chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 23 and 24. This basically brings us through about the halfway point of the book, at least on the kind of Kindle version that I have. That's what it says on the bottom. So we're making good progress here, but I'll just mention before I start, I do have YouTube channel membership and Patreon available if you'd like to help support the channel, and if you come in at the higher tier, you'll also gain early access to videos in this series. But we'll jump in with chapter 23. So we're here with the other leader of the Silver Fang, the Singer. And there's been a threat here. They've handed over the fan, and it's being used as a weapon, basically against Jin. But like I said in the last one, it's not really as crazy as you think. Within a paragraph, we're at the point where, like, this is a war fan, it gets closed, and it's just a description. It's one of these things where, like a lot of the other Silver Fang scenes, this person who's involved in the organization basically continues to test Jin by, like, explaining some things, asking some questions, that sort of idea. So yeah, this is a war fan. Avatar Kyoshi's chosen weapon. They said that with them she could conjure strong winds and control great waves, but her warriors, though they have no mastery of the elements, can use the fans to defend, deflect, attack, just like any other fighter with a Jian or a Dao. This is only a replica. No warrior will be found with a fan dripping with jewels, but I love the idea of a weapon that can be decorative as well as dangerous, of course. So kind of preconceived notions type dynamic there. And then the kind of truth about the kind of training mission kind of comes out here where, oh, Lady May is a dear friend who wouldn't mind having her room trespassed upon to test the mettle of our new initiates. So the whole setup for this was actually that, like, actually both sides of this are within the Silver Fangs. They do explain that, like, oh, the chase was real. Like, you didn't want to get caught by the guards who kind of came. But, like, you wouldn't have gotten in trouble if, like, the people at the house actually kind of caught you. That sort of idea seems to be the idea here. So yeah, it was actually a full-on test. It wasn't just a test mission. It was a, internal test within the Silver Fangs as well. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, then they're all brought cups of tea, of course. We get an interesting detail about kind of Patron Wu here, the Singer. Their height may even approach Avatar Kyoshi's well-known stature. So very tall character here, interestingly. But then they have to swear their oath of loyalty to the Silver Fangs. And this definitely feels a little bit kind of Dao Fei to a certain degree. So here is the oath. To protect those in our ranks a new family found. To leave no one behind, though the way may be treacherous. To speak no lies among us, for truth is our legacy. We so swear. So that's nice. Then you shall be initiates no more, but members in our ranks. If you will be true to us, then the Silver Fangs shares with you our protection and our wrath. So they all drink the tea then to seal the pact. And yeah, Jin is a full member of the Silver Fangs at this point, and the meeting with the other leader of the Silver Fangs has gone quite well. So yeah, we cut to the next scene, and Jin just kind of reflects on this, like, well, she's done it. She's part of the Silver Fangs. Would her family, would her mother and father be happy with this? But she kind of has to accept that this is the choice she has made, given that they're not around. This is what she needs to do to get Susu back overall. She then notes as she goes back to school that the dynamic with Xuan has kind of changed a little bit. That, like, hey, he nods to her. He doesn't seem to annoy her as much anymore. She feels the kind of bond that they have because they're both part of this secret organization that no one else knows about. That kind of idea. And yeah, even the people around Xuan have kind of changed because she's become more open with them. We say Renda kind of comes over to her to ask for some help with the calligraphy stuff that she actually knows about, and it's a very normal dynamic. She's getting to know the others as well. We do once again note that Jiang is still separate from the close circle of around Chuan. So they have kind of got rid of him because of what he said about Jin in that earlier chapter here. So a lot of the stuff that she kind of assumed is actually kind of true in that sense. She still considers herself not really part of their faction, but, you know, she's not kept at a distance. She's on the kind of periphery of things now. They kind of know her, of course. Then we get an important detail here of, like, you know, a few days have passed kind of since the initiation. You know, I find myself pondering while making my deliveries, my days settling into a different sort of routine, both the reputable deliveries for the Wens and the not so reputable ones for the Silver Fangs. What does it mean to be respectable, accepted, you know, to belong somewhere? Will she ever find a place like home kind of again? So that's kind of an interesting one. But it's important to note that a certain amount of days have passed here. Then we cut to, she's at the bakery with Mama Wen, and Mama Wen is like, hey, did you hear, Jin? The Kyoshi warriors have arrived in the city. So in terms of continuity, that would be this. The Kyoshi warriors of mention here would have to be Azula, Mei, and Tai Li. Now, this scene happens at the very end of 218, the Earth King. So this is why it's important that a few days have passed, as in the entirety of Lake Laogai has happened in the middle of this specific time skip that's happened right now. And we've jumped ahead to the events of basically past episode 18. So we're beginning to get very close to the end of book 2. So big moments, big things that affect the city are about to happen, of course. That's important to kind of keep in mind. So that's kind of cool. But we will move on. Yeah, they've never been known to leave Kyoshi Island. This must be a sign that change is happening. That's what Mama Wen says. Jin makes a note about the Avatar at this point. Does the Avatar care for the little people, though? The Avatar is not immortal. They die. They're human in the end, like the rest of us. In the stories, they can be selfish, cruel, indifferent. I don't have the same sort of faith in them. Just a bit of a mention there. This is where it's noted that Grandmother Wen is a little bit sick. They're a bit worried, but it doesn't seem like it's like absolutely desperation kind of type situation. Jane immediately is like, I'll make an appointment with Dr. John tomorrow. They're a little bit worried about that, I think mainly because can they pay for kind of the doctor's appointment. But Jane's kind of gonna go through with it anyway. I guess with the idea that now that she's part of the Silver Fangs, like this is in a way some of the benefits she kind of gets out of that, knowing how interconnected the lower parts of the lower ring actually are. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, she gives Jin some pastries, and Jin is able to kind of head out at this point. This is where she encounters Smellerbee and Longshot. They note that like he's carrying a basket, Smellerbee's holding a bowl filled with oranges. Their strides are purposeful, expressions intent, like there's an appointment they're already late to. So she goes up and is about to say like good morning or good afternoon or whatever, and she quickly stops because then she gets to see their expressions up close, and we get this. Longshot's eyes are red rimmed, like he's been crying. Smellerbee looks like she's about to rip something apart with her bare hands, and Jin is like, what happened? Smellerbee's about to be like, none of your business, when Longshot just kind of puts his hand on her kind of shoulder. Or no, he just glances kind of at her and to kind of calm it down. And then Smellerbee's like, you're right. He always liked pastries, because they spot the fact that she's holding all the pastries. So she kind of senses something's wrong and is kind of like, I think they could do with them more than me. So she kind of gives them some pastries and kind of follows them along. You know, Smellerbee says, you can come with us if you want. And she's just kind of like, she doesn't know what this is about just yet, but she follows them. So they kind of make their way through the side streets of the Snake Alleys, and they go through kind of parts of the block and stuff like that, past like the drainage canals and stuff like that. And then we arrive here at there's a section here covered with overgrown grass and brambles, the occasional tree that the city has tried to plant to manage the space. Officially, it's called the Spring Overlook, but everyone calls it the Weeping Hills. This is where the ground remains soft enough to dig up, so anyone who cannot afford a plot can still bury their dead. Most people come to complete their burial rites within the first few weeks after the passing of their loved ones, and this is why Smellerbee and Longshot are here, because of the timing of this situation. We know whose grave they're at here. It's Jet, because of course Jet dies at the end of Lake Laogai. They were there, of course, with him when it happened. Again, Team Avatar left to kind of pursue kind of Long Feng, eventually reunited with Appa, but Smellerbee and Longshot stayed there with Jet, who was basically just about to die. So this is where, you know, it almost became a joke afterwards, because they made fun of it in kind of Ember Island players, but like, Jet did die. It was pretty clear from the episode. You know, Katara, noted healer at this point, said it was bad, she couldn't heal him. Jet said he was okay, and then Toph, with her kind of lie detection kind of powers, said that he's lying. He himself knows that he's not okay. And then even the fact that, you know, this was the big moment where Longshot kind of like spoke for the first time, basically. The fact that he took control of this situation, he knew how bad this was. It was very, very clear, as much as there's the joke of, you know, like, did Jet just die? So they kind of acknowledge that kind of here, and it's really kind of well done here across this and the kind of following chapter. So yeah, they stride up the hill ahead of her confidently, and yeah, Smellerbee and Longshot stop before a fresh mound of earth, kneeling with their offerings before them. A new grave, a recent loss, another day in Ba Sing Se. Now, we continue with the more of the kind of like details of this in the next chapter, but that's kind of the kind of cliffhanger ending to kind of this chapter, is just, oh, Jin realizing they've just lost someone here. And again, the idea that Lake Laogai has pretty much just happened, and that, you know, they don't have the money, they've had to just find somewhere to bury him, to give him a place to rest, and this is all they can do in the kind of circumstances that they're actually in. And just the timing of all this is kind of fascinating, just to know that, like, oh yeah, this is what Smellerbee and Longshot do immediately after Lake Laogai. We didn't know this before. So yeah, chapter 24. Yes, Smellerbee stacks the kind of oranges down. They kind of note later on in the chapter that they're like his favorites overall. They put some kind of buns down there as well. And yeah, Jin kind of stands off to the side, you know, they bow their heads. They're still kind of crying as they kind of do this. And she just notes that, like, whoever this person was, they must have been very important to them. Because, you know, she's had a few encounters with them. They've maybe not seen, she hasn't seen this side of them being this emotional about something up to now. But it's also kind of interesting is that, like, she has actually seen Jet before. It's just that she doesn't know that the person who was fighting Lee was actually their friend Jet, and that actually she was in the same crowd as them when that scene happened. So there's a few kind of continuity moments kind of coming together here. You know, they light up some incense here as we're doing this, and it very much gives me the impression of, I think visually, it's meant to be like what Iroh does with Lu Ten. I'm a little bit unclear about, like, are they kind of trying to suggest it's effectively the same area, that the tree that Iroh goes up to is in the Weeping Hills as well, and that where Smellerbee, Longshot, and Jin are is effectively a different area of this same rough location. I think that's kind of the idea they're going for, because, like, they emphasize, like, the significance of, like, it looks nice at sunset, and you can see the sunset in this image, of course. So I think that's kind of what they're kind of trying to go for there, is to reference that whole idea. So yeah, then they say their kind of their goodbyes in a way. Smellerbee says, "I'm sorry we weren't able to help you, Jet." Smellerbee says roughly, "I hope you're at peace now." And then Longshot actually says something. "Farewell, brother," Longshot murmurs so quietly I can barely hear him. Smellerbee bows her head and Longshot places his arm around her shoulders. So just a nice moment, but it's almost interrupted here when some kind of guards come over, because it's getting late, of course. So Jin realizes, oh, I need to kind of handle this. So she goes down to interact with the guards. There are 3 of us, like, hey, we're not really doing anything. They're paying their respects to a loved one. Can you give them some like space and time? The guards kind of inform them that like there's been there's a change recently in the curfew for lower ring denizens. You'll be let off with a warning this time, but pay close attention to the notices. Certain sections are off limits after nightfall. And she hasn't heard anything about this up to now. It's for your safety and so on. They give them 10 minutes of like, we'll be back. And like, if not, something worse might happen. That's the kind of idea. So they're respectful to a certain degree, but still kind of like harsh about it. And that whole idea. So she goes back over to them and kind of reluctantly has to inform them that like, I think we have to leave. But they're already basically done, is the kind of effective idea here. Yeah, Longshot nods as if saying, we're already done. Smellerbee looks even smaller next to him somehow, crumpled and folded upon herself. They've packed away what they brought except for the oranges, which they've left there carefully peeled. His favourite? Yes. So she decides she kind of can't just leave them go off like this. So she's like, hey, come with me to Pow's. You can tell me about him. Like, they need this. They need to talk to someone about this, because I guess she obviously gets the sense from them that they're maybe not going to do like that much talking maybe themselves openly about this. So she kind of has to be the one to take charge here. So she leads them to Pow's, of course, and they do begin to talk a little bit more about him. They called him a natural leader, brave, someone who helped them band together when they were lost and alone. They shed their old names for new ones. That's interesting. Alongside others like the Duke and Pipsqueak, created a sort of family in the forest near Gaipan. And Jin is like, oh, Gaipan, I'm from Daiying Village across the river. So it highlights that these 2 areas are actually somewhat close together, which is kind of interesting. There's a Great Divide reference here in terms of just like, you know, Earth Kingdom patrols, you know, retreated further back towards the Great Divide after the fall of Daiying Village, of course. Then there is an interesting one here in the next paragraph. They actually give a brief kind of backstory about like what exactly happened to, I suppose, bring Smellerbee and Longshot to the Freedom Fighters. Smellerbee's family farmed in the mountains more to the north of Gaipan, closer to Taku, the herbalist kind of institute basically, and of course quite heavily referenced in the Yang Chen novels as well. Another casualty of the Fire Nation spread eastward across the continent. Longshot's village fell victim to attacks by Fire Nation archers, and he vowed to one day be able to best them. That was why he took on the bow as his chosen weapon. So some nice little details there just to kind of know that, like, oh, so this is kind of roughly in or around where Smellerbee's from, and the archery aspect with Longshot is effectively, he wants revenge against effectively the Yuyan archers, basically, and he has vowed to be better than those archers. That's a nice detail to just know about him. Now, it's a little bit unfortunate that they maybe don't delve into that a little bit more. I understand it's not inherently their book, but like I said previously with them, it's kind of like they're in or around this book, and in a lot of the chapters kind of going forward, they're kind of part of Jin's team to a certain degree. It would have been nice to get like a little bit more with them than is kind of presented here, but like I appreciate the little bits and pieces that they do give us, though. That's the whole idea. And yet, Smellerbee just notes, we remember, that's all we can do. Remember him, remember where we came from. We can build a life here, but we'll never forget. And yeah, she notes that I carry them around with me always. One day I'll go back. One day we'll all go back. That's the whole idea there. After that night, they seem more open to trusting me, though we never speak of their lost friend again. So it's still a very recent wound, of course. So that's somewhat understandable. Yeah, and then because they're closer friends because of this moment, you know, she notes that she shows them how to navigate the lower ring. In exchange, they teach me some of their tricks that they learned from surviving in the forest. Like, she learns how to tie knots from Longshot. From Smellerbee, she learns some kind of like stealth tactics in the alleys, you know, how to sneak up on someone. And then it's also mentioned An Chuan. We spend time together working on my earthbending skills, like practicing on more and more locks and stuff like that. She becomes more intertwined with the Silver Fangs, realizing it's much more extensive than she ever actually thought. We get caught up on the idea that Grandmother Wen does go to see Dr. John, and they kind of note that like the cough that she has, the poor sleep, it might be due to the many years of inhaling flour from the bakery and the smoke from the ovens. But it seems like she's going to be okay, but there is some worry for her, which I think makes sense. And yeah, then she begins to kind of focus back on kind of like Susu, and kind of thinking about kind of what happened there, which then kind of leads us into like, the next opportunity comes up sooner than I expected, because then when she's doing her next kind of upper ring delivery, they note here she takes back on the persona of Huajin to go to the upper ring, because she has been doing regular deliveries to Makmu Ling from the apothecary. Smellerbee and Longshot are with her as like her kind of attendants, kind of like bodyguards, because she's meant to look like a kind of high up kind of person delivering packages, so it makes sense that she would have some security herself as well, which is interesting. But then we're traveling back to the lower ring from the upper ring on the monorail when I see Susu embark at Tianluo Station. That's Tianluo Station. She's dressed in that creamy yellow uniform, the heavy green headdress atop her head. And, it just notes that, once again, she's not coming across as herself. Susu would never just, like, in a way, sit there like that. She would always be more kind of energetic, is kind of the idea here. And Jin is like, okay, I see someone I know. This is my chance. I have to talk to her again, and this time there's nowhere else for her to go. So she's managed to get this kind of like perfect opportunity where she doesn't have a bunch of people around her. She's just on her own, also on the monorail, traveling back to where she needs to go. So this is an opportunity for her to just openly have a conversation. Again, remember where Jin ended up after the first conversation with Susu, was that she settled on the idea that, oh, Susu must have been protecting me in that moment because there were people around, that it would have reflected maybe badly on her. It might have got me into trouble if she had said something more open to me about the situation. That's why she went full kind of blanking me in the first place. So that's what she kind of thinks. And the hope here is that, okay, we catch her on her own, where she might feel more comfortable just saying something. But of course, we know, if you've been catching up with this, you know that she's a Judy, basically. She has been brainwashed. So Jin, is she going to be able to get through? Because we know how to kind of reverse the brainwashing is sort of to really latch onto an inherently emotional memory of that person that the brainwashing is kind of asking them to forget. And that will gradually begin the process of making them remember who they were kind of prior to the brainwashing. Can Jin make that breakthrough is sort of the setup for the next time out. And this is actually a pretty nice kind of cliffhanger going into this one, in terms of how is the second meeting with Susu after she's left going to go for Jin. So there are these two chapters, and yeah, like I said, super interesting stuff in terms of like basically getting the funeral for Jet, getting that kind of resolution to this, kind of open plot thread to a certain degree. It's a nice one to kind of just like wrap up at this point, to kind of highlight that that's what happened. We get a little bit more information, context on this shortly, I believe, kind of after this initial incident happens, but I'll get to that when we get to those specific chapters. But there's definitely some nice stuff, I think, in this one here, as we get a little bit more emotional with Smellerbee and Longshot here. It helps the dynamic between them and Jin, that she goes to speak to the guards while they're saying their kind of final words to him. And it's pretty nice setup kind of as we go forward, as we kind of begin to get back into the plot of, okay, she's properly in the Silver Fangs now. This is where she's going to get the money to hopefully get Susu back. But then you realize, like, you're thinking in your head that, wait, if she's a Judy, even if they give the money to the right people, will it be accepted given the position that she's in? Like, if they actually got to the point where like they had the money and went to actually do that, would they actually agree to it here? Or would she just kind of get blanked in that kind of process with the idea of like, well, your friend doesn't want to go back because they've brainwashed her type thing. I'm assuming that would be the sort of idea. So you know that the overall goal right now of kind of generating money potentially likely won't maybe get what she wants. So this is where the timing is quite important, of course, because, you know, by the time the Fire Nation takes over, what position is Susu going to be in there? And what position is Jane and the Silver Fangs going to be in there when all the craziness is happening in Ba Sing Se? They're the things going through your head as you go into like the second half of the book, because now all of a sudden we're in the major political things are happening in the series in relation to the war. So super interesting stuff. But yeah, in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on these chapters. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.